His Worship, the Mayor of Port of Spain, Alderman Joel Martinez, Ms. Maxine Williams, Global Director of Diversity at Facebook and a distinguished lecturer, Professor Rhoda Reddock, our Deputy Principal for UE St. Augustine, Mr. Richard Saunders, Campus Registrar, UE St. Augustine, and the Deans of the UWI St. Augustine, Mr. Sharon Singh, our Director of the Office of Institutional Advancement and Internationalization, heads and other members of management and staff and students of UE St. Augustine, members of the public and private sector, our specially invited guests, and we have a special welcome to the friends and family of Ms. Williams, members of the media, and members of our live stream audience. I would like to welcome you all this evening to this distinguished open lecture featuring Ms. Maxine Williams. I would also like to acknowledge one of our distinguished guests who is running a little late. That is His Excellency Brigadier General Anthony Philip Spencer, Trinidad and Tobago Ambassador to the United States. We expect that he will join us soon. So good evening and welcome to our distinguished open lecture by Ms. Williams, Global Director of Diversity at Facebook. I am Professor Christine Carrington. I am Chair of the Open Lectures Committee here at the UWI St. Augustine campus, and we are extremely pleased and overwhelmed by the support that we've received this evening from you, all of you. As part of the university's knowledge transfer agenda, the Open Lectures Committee hosts high-quality lectures by prominent local, regional, and international speakers. And we do this every semester. And these lectures are an opportunity for us to engage with the wider community, with the wider national community on issues that are relevant both locally and regionally, issues that are relevant to our development. It also allows us to impact regional policy making, analysis, and evaluation, and it helps to generally stimulate, we hope that it helps to stimulate and encourage the pursuit of excellence. Our committee also hosts professorial inaugural lectures to showcase the research of the campus. And at this point, I will do a little plug. Our next professorial lecture will be this Thursday by Patrick Hossain. He's our new professor of computer science, and he'll be speaking on research, innovation, and education in STEM. So that's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So we hope that those of you who are interested in that area will join us on Thursday. At this point, let me just ask if you have a cell phone that's on, could you please turn it off? So at this point, and I will now ask our Deputy Principal, Professor Rhoda Reddock, to come up and deliver opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Chair of the Open Lectures Committee, Professor Christine Carrington. Ms. Maxine Williams, Global Director of Diversity, Facebook, Caribbean citizen, and this evening's distinguished speaker, His Excellency, the Mayor of Port of Spain, Mr. Sharon Singh, Director of the Office of Institutional Advancement and Internationalization, other colleagues, friends, specially invited guests, students, members of the public, members of the media, good evening. On behalf of our campus principal, Professor and Pro-Vice Chancellor Brian Copeland, and on my own behalf, it's really a privilege to welcome you to the UWI St. Augustine campus. We are honored to have so many of you here this evening. As you're aware, our open lecture series is an opportunity for the campus to engage with our public, and it doesn't really help when our public is not here to engage with us. So we're really happy that you accepted our invitation to be here this evening. Ms. Maxine Williams, of course, is no stranger to Trinidad and Tobago, a daughter of the soil, and indeed Facebook and the United States gain is in some ways TNT's and the region's loss. Loss of a vibrant, multifaceted personality, an attorney at law, actor, performer, a member of one of our region's artistic families. So even before she joined Facebook, she understood the intricacies of communications. Welcome home, Maxine. We at the UWI and at the Office of the Deputy Principal have in the past interfaced with Maxine, who is a Rhodes Scholar, as we sought to inspire young UWI students that applied to Rhodes Scholarships, she agreed and eagerly provided a video advising young persons on what they may wish to do to be considered for this scholarship. That video is still uploaded on the website of the Office of the Deputy Principal. Thanks, Maxine. So we are able to thank you in person. So we know, therefore, that Ms. Williams is a friend of the region, a friend of the UWI, and I'm sure that we all look forward to hear what she has to say. I really want to thank the chair and members of the Open Lectures Committee for this year, for organizing what I know will be an exciting and thought-provoking lecture. And I appreciate the fact that the committee seeks to ensure that the multidisciplinary approach is maintained in organizing these lectures, whereby the range of topics cover a spread of interest so that all the areas of the UWI's activities could be represented. Welcome, Brigadier Spencer, Ambassador Spencer. Today, in the world and in Trinidad and Tobago, we are experiencing a period of great change and uncertainty. In addition to the rapid changes in information technology, we are also experiencing sharp shifts in social, environmental, and other issues. Many persons in our society are experiencing the trauma of criminal violence, the trauma of survival in a very difficult and uncertain world. So the changes in information communications technology is just one, but a very important component of the transformations that are taking place. And as we know, these can have positive and negative effect. It's important that we are able to come here this evening to listen, to reflect, to learn, and consider on these important issues in an informed way. Now, it's important that we speak of global communities, and the concept of community is a very important one here at the UWI, as we as an academic community seek to advance education and create knowledge through excellence in teaching, research, innovation, public service, intellectual leadership, and outreach in order to support the inclusive development of a wider community, the Caribbean region, and beyond. Our Vice Chancellor has set out a vision for UWI to rekindle the Caribbean community spirit. In fact, our upcoming strategic plan will be built on the philosophy of an activist agenda, focusing on serving the immediate and other needs of our national and regional communities. Now, the UWI has utilized social media for some time now to reach its local as well as the wider audience, and I'm sure that what we hear today could help us to refine the ways in which we look at it. More recently, we have launched UWI-TV, which is on CaribVision as well as online, and I would really like to use this opportunity to ask you to tune into UWI-TV. Let us have your comments and feedback as the university tries to expand the ways through which it engages with our wider community. So in closing, I really want to thank Ms. Williams for agreeing to be here with us this afternoon, to thank the organizers of this lecture, to thank you, the public, for coming out to support the lecture series, and we hope to see you also at future lecture series. So thanks again, and enjoy this evening's lecture. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Reddock, and let me take the opportunity to formally welcome His Excellency Brigadier General Anthony Philip Spencer, Trinidad and Tobago Ambassador to the United States. Welcome. So thank you, Professor Reddock. The Open Lectures Committees in the past has hosted CARICOM leaders, CARICOM heads of government, Nobel laureates, professors from Ivy League institutions, and international entrepreneurs, and tonight we are extremely pleased to be hosting one of our very own, Ms. Maxine Williams. So at this point, to tell you more about this incredible woman, I am inviting Mr. Sharon Chandranath Singh to introduce her to the audience.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and I respectfully observe all of the protocols which have been previously stated. Special welcome to our specially invited guests and the university community. I am here, as stated by Professor Carrington, to introduce our featured speaker in my capacity as a member of the Open Lectures Committee and as Director of Institutional Advancement and Internationalization here at the St. Augustine campus of the UWI. Now, some of you may have seen Christine and I over the past week on television speaking about this evening's lecture, and I must admit that this was one of the easier ones that I've done. Everybody knows about Facebook, and they are all very keen to hear what you have to say, Maxine. There's a great eagerness. Now, I only just met Maxine actually for the first time in person a few minutes ago, but I do feel, however, like I've known her for a long time. Her reputation certainly precedes her. Your reputation does precede you. You're an accomplished and recognized daughter of our soil, as has been said, who is making a significant impact within an organization that is globally profound and relevant to both our individual and collective futures. Facebook itself is a company nearing almost 2 billion active users. Just take a second to understand the scope and scale of that. 2 billion. Active users, by the way, they take pains to clarify, with 85% of those users outside of North America, outside of America and Canada. That means that, it's really a global organization. It is also its own community. It has approximately 17,000 employees with offices spread all across the globe. In fact, quite frankly, I would not be surprised to hear within the next few years about vacancies for Facebook's new office on the moon. It would not be surprising at all. In fact, I'm sure it's in the planning, right, Maxine? It really is truly a significant organization with universal impact and aspirations. In fact, earlier this year, I think it was around January or February, Facebook's chairman, CEO, and founder, Mark Zuckerberg, a name that we all need no introduction to, shared a letter publicly which he titled Building Global Communities. In that letter, he promoted the importance of building a global community and shared Facebook's aspirations within that space. He stated that humankind has a history of coming together and building social infrastructure, and that our greatest challenges need global solutions. Mr. Zuckerberg then committed himself and his company, and I quote, to develop a social infrastructure to give people the power to build a global community that works for us all. I am sure that Maxine will speak some more about this in her talk. Now, you all have Maxine's biography on the program in front of you, so there is no need for me to repeat those words. I will, however, sum her up. She's a lawyer, a thespian, as you heard, a social entrepreneur, a mother, and an accomplished human being. Now, based on the size of this audience and the responses that we've received online thus far, it is clear that we are all eager to hear what she has to say. It therefore gives me great pleasure to welcome Maxine Williams to the stage to deliver her feature address on social media and the creation of global communities.
Thank you. Hello, how is everybody? Good. I think, can I walk away with this mic and you can still hear me? All right, good. Thank you for coming all this way. I said to them, I think if you all get 50 people, 75, you're good. You put in this big, big room for who want to hear more about this? So thank you for coming. You've heard where I work, and I heard both of the people who introduced me today talk about being a daughter of the soil. So let me give a little context to that. I am from some very specific soil here. I am from Woodbrook. Both of my parents are from Woodbrook. My parents are in fact those from the same street in Woodbrook. So when I talk about specific spot, right, if you could think of the globe and some sort of system where you're pinpointing things, like my little area don't go very far between Lewis and French on Robert Street. That's basically it, right? So I grew up here very committed to here and very much the beneficiary of the sense of belonging that one gets when one is from a small place. There is nothing like it. right? It was a pleasure to walk up and down. I mean, we were on Arapita Avenue skating with roller skates when that was a thing. Before it was the Avenue, right? When it was just our neighborhood. And then you would go to Adams Square and then see your friends, and then you're there for hours. Or before Ricey Road became what it was, and you would go down there and like play in the ravine and go in all the back alleys. And it was wonderful, right? People would point you out and they knew who you were. I mean, it was both good and bad, because then you couldn't do nothing bad, because then everybody knew who you were, and that news would go back. My grandmother on one side lived on the same street as my grandfather on the other side. And, you know, this concept of community, which was also mentioned, is something which I think we have had the benefit of. We know who we are because there are less variables involved, right? When you come from a small place where everything is sort of contained, there is less both opportunity for the sort of the intervention of otherness, but then there's also less opportunity for the creation of a different kind of identity beyond those confines. Now, in my case, that was bridged by the fact that my mother worked for BWE, when it was BWE. And it meant that we traveled a lot. So even though I came from this one street, we were always going somewhere else. And I, again, saw that as a huge benefit, because I felt like I come from this place where I know who I am, and I am so connected to this place, and all of my ancestors are here from this place. But at the same time, I get to see everything else. I get to understand our place in everything else, my place in everything else. And strangely, I then developed this sense that everything else was mine too. Right? I developed a sense of belonging to that too. That by chance you're born somewhere, but that this whole world belongs to all of us. That there is this bigger community. And you know, when you, again, come from an island, not just a small place, but an island, it's a very natural thing. I assume that most of you have done what I have done many times, which is you kind of go to the sea. In my case, I would go down to Ricey Road, and there it was. And you would look beyond and wonder what else there was, right? Because you knew this here, but you knew there was something else beyond there too, to which you were entitled. This was your world, right? These national boundaries, none of us set up, right? So in some ways they're arbitrary. I mean, we all know history and how they came to be, but all of it is ours. So the sense of community for me was, it was here and it was there. And now, you know, fast forward, that I work at a place called Facebook, and you've heard these statistics that how many people use Facebook every day. I think a quarter of the world is on Facebook all the time. And I have found it very easy to be a part of that, to be a part of this mission of connecting the world, because of where I am from, I think. Because of the habit we get at looking outside, at understanding or trying to understand the other, and trying to understand our place in the other, because I think of the education we had, which would have taught us about the history and the otherness and our place in that. And so a lot of the times when I'm here, people ask me the same question. I always say, how come that's the question they always ask, boy? But I realize now it's something that fascinates people, which is, how do you end up working at Facebook? Right? I see people shaking their heads because we're thinking the same thing. So there's this simple answer, which is, I applied online. All of the jobs are advertised online. So don't feel you have to send me all your resumes. We post all of there, no Vikey vibe, Bobo, where somebody knows somebody in the back. No, the job is open online. So I applied like everybody else. So that's a simple answer. But I think there is a deeper, more complex answer, which is that I end up at Facebook because of where I begin. Right? We understand community with the small e, small c, and the big C, that we belong to the whole world. So when I was asked, what would I want to talk about? I said, you know, let's talk about global community. Because I do think we can get in the habit of only thinking within this boundary and not beyond, which we are also a part of, and we are entitled to participate in. So, with that, let's talk about some of this Facebook stuff. See if this works. All right, one click, nothing works. Maybe? Delayed? No. My friend said he would be here if something did not work. Let's see. No, that's not what's supposed to be playing. No, neither that. Right. Okay. So, if I speak here, is it going to double up the mic? You're good. Okay. In 2016, actually no, in 2014, Zika broke out in Latin America. It was around then. And the whole world went crazy. Everybody was panicking. We were panicking here because everybody thought this thing was going to take over. And at that time, UNICEF in Brazil went into action mode because they wanted to limit the damage. Latin America was the sort of center, the starting point. And they knew that if this thing was left to run its course, it would be, untold damage on this generation, the next generation, etc. So when they activate in a crisis like that, what it usually means is coming up with an action plan. They would get focus groups of people together, they would do analysis, they would hire marketing people and communications people, and all of this is an effort to understand what is happening and then to get people to change their behavior so that you kind of stymie the tide of the disease, right? But that means you have to get the right information to the right people at the right time before it's too late. So they see this crisis erupting and they go into this mode. The other thing that was happening in Brazil at the time is that more than 108 million people in Brazil were using Facebook. Over 90% of the people online were using Facebook every day. And so that provided a great opportunity for UNICEF and for Brazil. We partnered with them to do something that made sense, which is that we provided aggregated, anonymized data to UNICEF about public conversations around Zika, broken down by states and demographics. UNICEF incorporated those learnings into a data-driven campaign. They discovered, for instance, that 58% of the people speaking about Zika in Facebook were men. And this was not intuitive, right? Because you think of a disease which affects pregnant women and babies, you wouldn't have thought that more men were speaking about it in Facebook than women. That kind of information allowed UNICEF to think clearly about what it needed to do to get the right message to the right people at the right time. So they developed this whole campaign based on that insight. This is one of the ads from the campaign. You see the father with the baby. That is Felipe Tavares, kissing his daughter, who was born with microcephaly. In the text, if you can read Portuguese, you'll understand. If not, I'll tell you. He explains how ever since his daughter was born with the birth defect, he worked to provide fathers across Brazil with the support they needed to return to their families, so mothers aren't the only ones raising babies alone. When he posted this, so he posted this himself, he got a lot of readers and a lot of responses. About 60,000 people responded to this post. However, once UNICEF partnered with Facebook to use this in their campaign, within hours, the campaign had been viewed by about 4 million at-risk Brazilians. So we could see the real effect of social media, understanding, sharing, and working with a country. The campaign led to 82% of those who were reached taking action to protect themselves against Zika. Now, if you ever ran a campaign, you'll understand how ridiculously huge that number is. To get 82% of the people you intend to reach to do something, not just to look at something, to do something because of that. But it's because they had the right data. Because people were using Facebook to talk about the things that mattered most to them. And we were able to partner with them. When Sharon gave you the statistic that 85%, it's about 87%, I think, people who use Facebook are not in North America, it's an important thing to keep in mind because people think of it as an American company. But it almost has nothing to do with America except that that's where the company began because so many more people who are non-American are using this to connect and to do good for their communities and for the global community. This campaign ended up going beyond Zika with another post and another calling on people to protect themselves from other diseases as well, other illnesses borne by the same mosquitoes. The Chief of Communication and Partnerships for UNICEF Brazil said, and I quote, "I cannot stress enough how much we have learned about the power of using online insights to engage people with the right information at the right times. This can literally save lives." So we got the right message to the right audience at the right time and affected behavior change. And this is importantly, this was done infinitely faster than what would normally have happened, which was, as I described, the focus groups and the analysis and all of this. And guess what? It was free too. Very, very critical as we are trying to deal with things which affect people all over the world. In addition to the work with UNICEF and other groups, all over you are seeing people, not even in a coordinated fashion, but using this tool in their global communities to help themselves. We talk about, at Facebook, we talk about thinking globally and acting locally. So for instance, there are some places where 9 out of 10 doctors use WhatsApp to contact their patients, to get a quicker dialogue between them and their patients. There are many, many groups where people are in secluded areas and they will get images of something going on with them sent to a doctor, some other country, right? So again, it's cross-border. They will post in groups, Facebook groups, and get a diagnosis. There are people who are suffering from rare diseases where wherever they live, within their boundaries, they have been told there's nothing that can be done for their child. Their child has a rare form of cancer. They find a Facebook group where there are other people in all kinds of countries. So again, in this global community, who are experiencing the same thing, but who have found a trial, right, an experimental something. And they get their child involved in this as well. And it works. They've saved lives through this connection, this global community that people have built. There is this sense of belonging. You know, when I talked about me and being from a place that I feel very connected to, but feeling like I belong to the whole world, by having these connections, we are seeing how people are developing that same sense of belonging for themselves. I've seen people in Trinidad who have experienced some of what I've just described, suffering from something and feeling very alone. Because again, when you're dealing with economies of scale, when scale is an issue, there are very few people around you who might be experiencing something, but there are certainly other people in the world who are doing it. And being able to find those people has given them hope. And in many cases has changed their lives, literally. But it's not just in the health sector where this has impact. There are many, many other areas. So for instance, we've created a tool called Safety Check, which is on Facebook. Safety Check is a tool that people can use to mark themselves safe after a crisis. When we first created the tool, we would activate it when there was a natural disaster somewhere at a certain scale, a typhoon, a tsunami. But now we've developed it such that people can activate it themselves. So when there's a crisis somewhere, and trust me, there is always a Trinidadian somewhere in that crisis, they are able to let their friends and family who may not be able to get in touch with them know that they are safe. Governments call us when there is a crisis now. They call Facebook to make sure that Safety Check has been activated. You know, if you think about that, if you're a student of political science, right, or history, think about how new that is and how unusual that is. That a government would call a company that provides a service for free to find out if it has been turned on so their citizens can use that service. Or so wherever they are in the world, they can have the benefit of it. I remember when I graduated from Yale, where I did my first degree, I went to live in Haiti. And I had created my own major in Caribbean Studies and felt very like, again, this whole region was mine. And so I went to the country that I felt, needed the most help in the region, and I was going to go and help there. And despite all of my promises to my family that this was safe, of course, 2 months after I get there, big coup. So I get up one morning and tires burning in the street and everything going crazy, and I know nobody in Haiti. There was no safety check. In fact, in those days, there was no Facebook. There was no way for me to tell people where I was and what was going on, no way for them to reach me. And an even more bizarre thing occurred, where somehow someone in an office that I must have been connected to got a call and said to me that somebody from the Trinidad government called looking for me. So they knew I was there somehow, and they called looking for me. And at that time, the Americans were airlifting their people out of Haiti. There wasn't anybody coming with any plane for me. So when this woman said to me, somebody called from the Trinidad government looking for me, I said, when they sending the plane? She said, no, they said, get through. We hope you're okay. Good luck. And I on my own, right? There was no Facebook. There was no safety check. I had no way to call for help. So when I say to you, there's a Trinidadian everywhere, and there are things which are beyond us, which include us, which are truly global, where having a tool that connects everyone in the world is a benefit to all of us. It takes nothing away from us. It gives more to all of us. So I personally know how much I would have liked there to have been a safety check at that time. Climate change is another one of these areas where no matter what we think, we belong to the rest of the world, and the rest of the world belongs to us. I am here a couple of days, and everybody complaining about the dust. Boy, no matter how you sweep out your house, as you turn around, more dust. And the dust is starting here, right? Sahara dust. It come in. There is nothing we can do. There are no national, but there's no wall you could build high enough. You could try. It ain't gonna help. We are a part of a globe. We are a part of a global community. So we have seen through Facebook how activists are fighting together against climate change. This environmental issue which stops at no one's borders. It's a wonderful thing to witness. Social media also has an impact on how people do business.
Decidimos venir a vivir acá a 3.186 metros de altura en la montaña para que nuestros hijos muy pequeños pudieran crecer en este ambiente. No sabíamos nada de agricultura, pero tomamos la decisión de empezar un negocio haciendo compost. Pensamos que es una actividad muy digna, pero no ha sido fácil. Nos ha sido muy útil poder entrar a internet.org gratuitamente. La página de Su Dinero, de planificación financiera, me ha enseñado a ahorrar. Reviso historias de éxito de mujeres en Yo Aprendo. Crecí en una granja de la China rural. Como no tenía dinero para publicidad, asumí yo misma la tarea de promoción. Me motivan a perseverar cuando hay dificultades, sobre todo. Con internet.org tengo herramientas para continuar con ese sueño que tengo.
You all know where this is from? Anybody can understand accents? Where? No, not Bolivia. No, not Chile. I know somebody in the audience who used to live in this country, and that person should be shamed. It's from Colombia. But look at how fascinating this woman in rural Colombia is starting her own business, doing compost, and she is going online and learning from a woman in China how to do this and making a living and supporting her family. Now, there are two issues here, right? One is this connection with other people through social media. So the app that she was talking about where she's connecting with a woman in China and learning more is one thing. But that's running on top of something else, which is an internet connection. And I'll talk a little bit about that. But you see how being connected to other people, what she's getting is information. And she has a right to the information that exists anywhere. Just because she lives in a rural town in Colombia doesn't mean that she should only have the benefit of the information that the people around her possess. Why shouldn't she get tips and advice from somebody in China so that she can live in her community and do something which is beneficial to her family and those beyond her? It also has a real distinct impact on education.
Nakatira ako sa isang maliit na isla. Ang tanging trabaho ng babae dito ay ang mulot ng kabibe. Subalit higit pa ang gusto ko sa sarili ko. Kaya napagdesisyonan ko ang mag-aral ng computer science sa bayan. Sumasakay ako ng bangka araw-araw para lamang makapag-aral. Nung sinusulat ko ang thesis ko, nagkaroon ng malakas na bagyo. Ilang linggo akong hindi makaalis ng isla. Silid-aralan ang telepono ko to communicate with my group mates. Ginamit ko ng mga kaklase ko Facebook through internet.org para maisulat namin ang thesis namin. Ang automated water billing system of Colasi Water District. Ipinagmamalaki ko na ako ang una sa pamilya na nakapagtapos ng computer science.
So, what this woman is doing is a version of what we see a lot of people doing. She is using Facebook groups to enhance her education. There's been all this research done around how that sense of belonging causes people to want to stay in their courses for longer, because again, you do not feel alone. There are so many times in which you are among other people, but you still feel alone, because there's something that you are pursuing, something that you have your mind on, and maybe they don't. So there are human beings around you, but there's a place and a space where your mind is. And hers is with her computer science course and with her group mates. And she's able to use Facebook to connect with them and to go deeper in her education. There are, of course, other people who are not a part of a class, but have found a group and are learning other things through that group. So in all kinds of versions, we're seeing how this is helping people get beyond where they are to get to where they can be with more information and with more support with a global community. Social media has affected governance, of course. Now elected representatives in many places connect with citizens who they would be with face-to-face, and citizens themselves share information and build community around causes that they care about. And that's international as well. People are using Facebook to fight hate. They speak out for tolerance. When everyone was glued, when the Syrian refugee crisis, it's still taking place, but at one point when we all saw the image of Alan Kurdi, the young boy who was on the beach, within, organizations that were trying to raise money that were saying to the world, people, there is a crisis going on. Millions of people are coming, there's a crisis going on. And you say that over and over and over, and yet it seems like people were not being motivated to act. And when this picture of Alan went up, it was downloaded 20 million times within the first 12 hours. And of course, what then happened was that the empathy was created globally and donations started to flow in. And they were able to raise much, much more money to support these people, right? So your local political crisis becomes an international refugee crisis. Again, we can't contain everything. We are a global community, so acting like one is helpful. As Sharon mentioned, my CEO wrote a letter recently. He posted it on his Facebook page, and he spoke about this concept of global communities. I just want to read another part of that letter. He says, "Today's threats are increasingly global, but the infrastructure to protect us is not. Problems like terrorism, natural disasters, refugee crises, and climate change need coordinated responses from a worldwide vantage point. No nation can solve them alone. A virus in one nation can quickly spread to others. A conflict in one country can create a refugee crisis across continents. Pollution in one place can affect the environment around the world. Humanity's current systems are insufficient to address these issues. We have to work together. The spreading of information, the building of global communities, of people united around an idea, a cause, a mission, but separated by distance or national boundaries, is not new. We could go through history and point out so many times in which people either were forced to work together or chose to work together. And often these things have two sides to them. So I mentioned that I lived in Haiti. It is a fact that when the Haitian Revolution happened in 1791, so of course, this was the one place that a revolution was so successful that people who were formerly slaves took over the country. And boy, they work like hell. They beat back everybody. Whoever they send for them, they fight them down, right? And they took their freedom. Once that happened, news of that spread everywhere. And you can link now slave revolts in the Americas to what happened in Haiti, because the news had traveled that these people had been successful at this. And so now, slaves in Louisiana or South Carolina are now inspired that maybe we could try a thing too. Now, if you think about that, that is exactly what it's like. We are a global community. People moved, right? You would have had planters who fled to other places where slavery was still legal, but spoke about what was happening and the word traveled. And then people started to act on it, inspired by what had happened somewhere else. One can imagine that at that time, if you were against this ghastly enterprise of slavery, you would think this is a great thing, that they have seen there as a possibility of freedom, so more will be inspired to take the risk, to take the chance, to try a thing, to act. On the other hand, if you were a planter who believed that this was my economic system being disrupted, you would think, I hate the fact that this news is spreading, right? Why does Marco come and spread this rake? Because things was good for me before then. So this thing about information sharing has two sides to it. There will always be people who are happier that we know more about what is going on in the world, and then there will be people who think that's too much information, right? Let's stick to this. So the first thing when you talk about a global community, if you are in favor of, if you see the value in it, it's because you think, you know, that woman in Colombia and this woman on her little island, they are entitled to the information which the world has. Whereas, you also see that once people get information, things might happen that you, depending on where you stand, may not want to happen. Think about how hard it would have been before something like Facebook for you to get your opinion out about something, right? There were barriers to entry that we weren't even very conscious of. You just didn't, as I said, you didn't try that thing, right? How would you get, if you were just an ordinary citizen, how would you get your opinion out to not even the world, try your country, right? You could tell your friends, but could you get, I don't know, a notice in the newspapers? Could an ordinary person get an editorial written? No, it would have to be somebody who was the editor of the newspapers, or a journalist, or a government official, or maybe a big Sawati in a big corporation. And you could get your word out. There were barriers to entry. And with Facebook, there aren't. It's free, as long as you have the internet. And again, this is something now that there will be two sides to. There will be different opinions about. By the way, we have gotten very comfortable in a company which billions of people use with the fact that you can't please everybody. Cannot do it. Some people will think it is a fantastic thing that those barriers to entry have been reduced, that everyone can have a voice now, that you don't have to be a big shot to be heard. And there are other people who will think Well, now this has gone the way of I don't know what. Everybody now have something to say, and there are no quality checks. You know, the gatekeepers were a good thing. And people are entitled to feel those different ways. I think for each of us, we have to think about what for us is the right thing. What do we want more? Do we want that connection more? Do we want that information shared? Do we want people to each have a voice, to be able to be heard? Or do we prefer it a different way? The benefits of what the universe has to offer is what I see as the value of being a member of this global community and having access. So the other thing people often ask me about being at Facebook is, so what exactly do you do? What does it mean to be in diversity? So I'll tell you briefly. What I do is I develop strategies for Facebook, the company, to develop a more workforce in terms of who our people are. We want people from all backgrounds, people who represent the people in the world, because we know that if we are building for the world, we will only build the things that the world truly wants to use if we represent all of those different perspectives, right? If you have A building for B, A is probably not going to build exactly what B wants. You want B and A building together for B and A. So my job is to create those strategies along with my amazing team to get as many different people as possible working on these things. There's a great professor at Michigan, Scott E. Page, who's a professor of complex systems, who has done all this great work around figuring out that if you are trying to solve complex problems, the more diversity you have on teams, the better your solutions will be. If you're trying to solve simple problems, you probably don't need that much diversity. In fact, it's often a disadvantage. Because if you're just trying to do an assembly line thing, once you get a diverse team, there's going to be conflict, different ways of doing it. It's a lot to manage. So when you're doing something simple, just, keep it going. Like, you're trying to put a hamburger together, one person do the bun, the next one do the patty, you do the tomato, and keep it going. But when you're trying to solve complex problems, you want as much diversity as possible. And for us, connecting the world, we posit, is one of them complex problems. So we want as many different people as possible doing this, because the benefits are great. When I think about all of the things that I've learned in the time I'm there, every day the world is teaching us things we didn't know, things we hadn't thought about. You think about the fact that this company is only 13 years old and was started by somebody who was 19 years old. And until then, no one had conceived that there was a way to get everybody in one place. But like I said, when you have everybody in one place, there's going to be lots of discord, right? But what I know is that we all do better when we have the benefit of different perspectives. So having a global community where people share information, where people can receive information, where they can connect with other people is an amazing thing. And if you think about our countries in this region, where we have people from all sorts of different ancestral backgrounds who came here by different means, we already have such rich diversity that having as well the access to the information from everywhere, connections with people from everywhere, you'd be surprised, right? When we look, we have the data all over the world, how people are using Facebook, try to guess the places where people have the most international friends. Just shout out. Give me a guess. Where? No? Not bad though. No. Montserrat. Montserrat pops up in our literature. Because why? There are 5,000 people in Montserrat. No, I mean, so you know what? They are smart. They are smart to be connected in other places, because now you're getting that input, right? You're getting that creativity. You're getting different ways of thinking and seeing. They made themselves part of a global community, despite all of the water around them and all the volcano in the middle. They are part of a global community for free to get the benefit of that. So, as I see it, my actual job to work on diversity and get more of it, this this thing of being a part of this thing is wonderful, because now you have all this raw material to work with where you can pull from what's going on in different places as it applies to you and get the benefit for your people. I had said that the internet was another part of it, of course. You can only do all of this if you have an internet connection. So one of the things that we have been working on as well is a project called internet.org, which is about trying to get people who are unconnected connected to the internet. I should have mentioned that we are a very data-driven company, so everything we do sort of centers on that, right? So here's what we know. We know that of the world's 7 billion people, only 2.7 billion have access to the internet today. And the unconnected typically live in developing countries. We also know that for every 10 people connected to the internet, 1 rises out of poverty. I mean, think of that. So when you see people like these 2 women in these videos, right? The connection to the internet and then the social media on top of it where they can connect to people, they're building business, they're going to school, productivity increases. Deloitte did a study recently where they found that if developing countries could bridge the gap in internet penetration to reach levels in developed economies today, they would experience increases in GDP growth and productivity and improvements in health conditions and education opportunities. The resulting economic activity could generate 2.2 trillion in additional GDP, a 72% increase in the GDP growth rate, and more than 140 million new jobs, just by getting connected to the internet. So you can see the potential to reduce poverty and to promote social development and economic development. I'll show you one more video.
Being from a small town like Kitale, there are no resources for artists. Free Basics allows me to connect with the community of artists all over the world. Because people were seeing my work online, now I'm the lead artist at the Kitale Nature Conservancy. I get paid to make sculptures of wild animals in the landscape. When you're connected with other people, you have a world that's looking at you. Because Free Basics is free, it gives me a wide platform. I can be connected anytime, anywhere. I want to pass everything that I know about art to the next generation of artists in Kenya.
There's something that connects those 3 people in the 3 videos. Does anybody think, besides if I'm using Facebook? And it is that none of them have left where they're from, right? They have taken advantage of what technology now provides to learn more and to do more right where they are. They are part of a global community, using what the globe has to offer. I love my friend in Kenya at the end here, because also, I've talked a lot about, benefits, healthcare, and, environmental issues, and governance, and economic opportunity, and education. And he's using it to increase his ability to produce beautiful things. Art. And he's learning from artists all over the world. That shouldn't belong to anyone, right? The inspiration that comes from that exchange. Now, he has also made a business out of it, but he has more than that, a sense of purpose. Who he is has been enriched by the fact that he's connected to other people through social media. When you're born as an artist, and I feel like artists are born, right? You know them from small. They are who they are. And they are often people who can feel isolated no matter how many other people are around them. Because there are things going on in their head, right? There's creation happening all the time. And they want to bring that out. And having a community of people who help, they're bouncing ideas off each other, right? And learning and sharing and producing. And we are the beneficiaries of all of that beauty. And that beauty which people rarely put a financial value on is something that all of us, boy, take it away and you see where we end up. And bring more of it and you will see where we end up. To support art is to support human beings, to support life and creativity. And all of this is things we do through community. So you're building these communities as a part of being this global citizen through this technology that is provided for everyone. It's really a remarkable time to be here, to be alive, to take advantage of all these things, and nobody left where they are. We're thinking global and we're acting local. The same letter that Mark Zuckerberg wrote, in that he said, history is the story of how we've learned to come together in even greater numbers, from tribes to cities to nations. At each step, as Sharon said, we built social infrastructure like communities, media, and governments to empower us to achieve things we couldn't on our own. Our greatest opportunities are now global, like spreading prosperity and freedom, promoting peace and understanding, lifting people out of poverty, and accelerating science. Our greatest challenges also need global responses, like ending terrorism, fighting climate change, and preventing pandemics. Progress now requires humanity coming together, not just as cities or nations, but also as a global community. It's not a binary thing. Just because you're a member of a global community doesn't mean you're no longer a member of your village, your town, your nation. It's yes and. In times like these, the most important thing we at Facebook can do is develop the social infrastructure to give people the power to build a global community that works for us all. Thank you.
I think we can do better than that. Please give her a hearty round of applause. Thank you, Maxine. Come, join me.
Let me sing.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for a most dynamic and informative talk. We really enjoyed it. So folks, you've been given a sort of a glimpse behind the curtain, and hopefully you've been inspired to participate and help build not only our global community, but our local community right here in Trinidad and Tobago and the wider Caribbean region. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of people that have some questions for Maxine, so we're going to do a question and answer session. But there are ground rules. Underline, 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 exclamation, exclamation. It's on my paper. This is absolutely not an opportunity to complain about the post that your boyfriend made last week. And as Maxine said, it is not an opportunity to try and get a walk at Facebook. So you can apply. Yeah, I guess you encourage you to apply, right? But we ask that you don't give a speech or try to challenge Maxine in a debate, but rather state a succinct and simple question that she will answer. If you don't get the answer you want, you're welcome to try and restate it again. I ask that you start with your name, introduce yourself, and we'll do this for about 20-25 minutes, and then we'll bring it to an end the close of today's proceedings. But shall we open the floor? There are microphones being held by the ushers in the blue jackets. Please, raise your hands. We'll take the one that I see right in front of me here first.
Good evening. My name is Vianna Morrow, and my question is regarding internet.org. I was hoping you could expand a bit on the concept and what it's about, and if there is opportunity for communities in Trinidad and Tobago, the Caribbean, to access. Thanks.
Yes.
Would you like to answer one by one?
Yeah.
Or take it? Okay, sure.
So internet.org is one of our projects to bring the internet to places where people are either not connected or under-connected. And in fact, we are already in the Caribbean, in many different territories, including in Trinidad. The thing about Trinidad, and actually it's probably the reason why Montserrat comes up on our list, is that in our region, that there is, compared to many others, decent internet. So you will find that, most people, I think more than half of the people in Trinidad have a smartphone, and there are something around, I want to say like 1.2 million SIM cards out there, right? So people, even though there's 1.4 million people in the population. This is not the most poor of the poor, but there are places in the world where truly there's nothing approaching that. And those are the places that will probably have more of the benefit. But we are already here and in several other islands, and what it means is that if there is a relationship with your telecommunications provider, they will allow people to get a certain amount of access to data free so that you can get the benefit of some of what the internet has to offer. So where we've seen this work very well, for instance, people are looking at job boards, right? There are community job groups, or people are looking at maternal health statistics, or farmers are looking at the weather, and that's changing how they do their farming and benefiting their communities. And we have partnered to give that for free so that they can access that and get the benefit of it. So that's what internet.org is, and it is in many countries all over the world, and it is already in many of the countries in the Caribbean.
Thank you. We'll go across to that side.
Nicole Cowie. I have a question. As a person with a disability and as an activist, I've seen how Facebook has been a powerful tool for persons with disabilities to form community. A community, especially that sometimes physically can't get out.
That's right.
And to bring about a new brand of online activism. So I want to know, what exactly is Facebook doing? What initiatives does Facebook have to do with persons with disability, particularly with hiring persons with disabilities within the company, and then your diversity initiatives globally?
Yeah. So yes, you're right. Many, many people with disabilities have formed groups on Facebook. They are absolutely one of those communities where I would say that before they would have been sort of shut in, and now this has given them a second life. It's the same thing we see for a lot of retirees, where they've been given a whole second life, and people started second businesses and stuff because they can do it from home and connect with other people and feel a sense of belonging. For us as a workforce, we are very much focused. People with disabilities is one of our top groups that we are focused on hiring in many of the countries around the world. And so we do a number of different strategies. We partner with organizations that work with people with disabilities to advertise the jobs, to do training, etc. We'll bring people in on internships, all in an effort to get people more opportunity to compete for these jobs and to do these jobs. So we do it, and depending on the different jurisdictions, we do different things. Yeah? Well, in general, it's really about how the people use the platform. So the big thing about Facebook is that we provide this platform for people to use in the way people see fit. So that is one of the sort of, ideas that people often have, like, what is Facebook doing? But for us, it's like, what is the community doing? Like, we are providing the community with this free means of collaborating and developing, sort of building their power together. What we will do is, for instance, we have a page which is Facebook for Causes, where we give the communities tips on here's how to work your cause well on Facebook. Or we'll have Facebook for Small Business, and you could just go to that and search it, and then we'll tell small businesses how to use it. We have millions of small businesses now on Facebook. I have friends, Caribbean friends, who, going to start their own business and said, I never got around to making my business cards because I just started the Facebook page and I was able to connect with people, with customers. So again, there are for instance, a lot of women who otherwise, because they were home raising children, have said to me, I couldn't go out in the workforce, but I could do something from home, and they've started a business. So the same thing for a lot of people with disabilities, where we will give the general tips on here's how to use the platform, and then the community responds.
If I may just interject real quick, I want to share a story that I heard about Facebook, which is applicable to this conversation, because a lot of what we talked about here is access, but also it's an opportunity to build a collective, better future. I saw a story where Mark Zuckerberg posted, he was talking with one of your visually impaired engineers. And it was a very simple project that they worked on. It was driven by the engineer who himself came up with the idea. But I found it most profound. Visually impaired people, when you look at a Facebook feed, normally the technology reads the words. But imagine if you were visually impaired and you saw, it says, there's a picture here and the caption is, "Oh, what a night!" Exclamation, exclamation. You don't know if it was a good night, a bad night, you have no clue. So they developed some AI that actually describes the picture. Now, okay, that's pretty interesting. But when they started to talk about the fact that this will enhance the quality of life of hundreds of millions of visually impaired people, then you start to understand the scale of global community. That organizations like this and mechanisms like this create an opportunity for upliftment of hundreds of millions of people, not just a few people at a time. But so I wanted to share that because there's some very practical ways in which it's advancing people's lives.
Yeah, we have something called an accessibility lab on campus, where if people go, you can go and see, where we show how we create Facebook for people who have a whole range of disabilities, so they can use the platform. So beyond connecting in their groups, we also then try to make it accessible so everybody can really participate in it.
That's tremendous. Sorry, we'll go back up, Renata.
Hi, Nadine Kamabach. I actually have two questions. The first,
I don't know if the boss allowed it.
I said what, eh?
The first is a bit loaded. The first one is...
Ask the second one now.
The first one is, with the current political climate in the U.S., how difficult is your job now? Now that there's this America First agenda, is it that Facebook is still going ahead with their objectives towards having a diverse workforce, or do you have to massage the policy a little bit? That's the first question. Second question.
I can answer that easily. Yes, we are going ahead with our policy of diversity.
It wasn't that loaded after all.
No, it wasn't loaded at all.
So the second question is, within our economy right now, the main theme is economic diversification. What points or what areas do you think that we should be looking at based on your insights into Facebook and the digital economy? Where do you think we should be focusing?
As a country?
Well, in terms of developing our economy, yeah, as a country, you may have some insight.
I think diversification is a good thing no matter what, right? You want to be hedging, right? You don't want to be subject to any monoculture or a mono economy that would leave you vulnerable and exposed. But in terms of being able to advise on what the country should be doing, all I can stand here and say is you should be taking advantage of all that exists in the world, to be learning from it, to be inspired by it, to be building together, because the type of creativity I have seen people able to leverage by being connected to other people is remarkable. So that if you're not doing that, I think it is absolutely the case that we should be getting more into that knowledge economy.
Yes, I'm Jimmy Chankit. My question to you is this. You're a director of Nina Massey, and also... Massey, and also a member of the Facebook team. Now, we've had unprecedented connection to technology. I remember since I worked in IBM in 1982, we had the first network system here in 82 to now. Why do you think, and this must have crossed your attention, why do you think that we have not been able to capitalize on the amount of investment we have made in all of this connectivity and investment in computer equipment in this country? Why do you think that we're still stagnant and still wondering why we can't benefit or diversify or make money out of this thing? And we have the longest history in communication technology in the Caribbean.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I don't think I am equipped to answer that. No, I don't, when I said everything is data-driven where I come from, and I don't know if the premises are supported by the data, so it's hard for me to comment on whether we are or we aren't, and what we have done or haven't done and haven't taken the benefit of. Sorry.
We have a question up here.
Yes. Hi, good evening. My name is Wilson Francois. You mentioned the fact that everyone has a voice, and it is important that everyone, have that voice and share that voice. But in more and more today, we hear more and more about fake news, and Facebook is more and more seen as a media company, like traditional media journalists, because of the very nature. So, how do you square having, everyone having their voice with everyone being responsible with what they put out? What measures can be possibly put in place? How do you square the two?
Yeah, well, we are putting in place a lot of measures and have already put in place a lot of measures. I think the way you square it is that, when I talked about the fact that the spreading of news is not a new thing, right? I took you back to the Haitian Revolution and mentioned that, news will spread. Some will be true and some will not be. Think of how many people, pick up the telephone every day and just spread false news. Is it the telephone's fault? It's the people. So the point is, people have always been like this. We take this thing very seriously, where we would like it to be a platform where people are getting the information which they want about the things that are important to them. And so because of that, we have put things in place to help communities, to help people to determine whether they are going to receive something as truth immediately. So, we have to balance the fact that I don't think the world wants us to be the arbiters of truth, because that would raise a whole other set of issues, right? If Facebook was deciding what is true and what is not true, people would not be happy with that either, because then that is getting into people's voice space, right? If we believe that people should have voice, should we be the ones to decide who gets to have the voice? Because often in these situations, it's not something as absurd as, the world is flat. It's stuff that has nuance in it. It's stuff that might be sensational. It's stuff that might have a kernel of truth, but then it doesn't have. And you wouldn't want Facebook to be deciding that. So what we are trying to do is to work with third-party fact checkers and other organizations to give people, first of all, I think the fact that people are more aware of it means that the individual person can be more discerning and check things too, right? That there is so much information available, again, that you have the opportunity to check. So that's absolutely should be sort of a starting point. But then because we're taking this thing seriously, and we see the damage it can cause, now we have a number of different initiatives which are going to give people the opportunity to get signal otherwise about whether something should be taken at face value or not.
Thank you. On that side.
Hi, good evening. Thank you very much, Maxine. Excellent presentation, as always. Jillian Wall, my question to you is, as a TNT national, very passionate about Facebook and all that it has brought to the world, do you have any particular vision or desire for what you would like your country to actually do in terms of taking advantage of both your role as head of diversity at Facebook and the technology that you have available to you, given that we operate in a very tiny domestic market, contracting economy, and still have issues with regards to online trade? Do you have any particular visions as how you can help your country reach more of the world? Is there any particular dream that you have for TNT that you would like to see that we can leverage upon?
I kind of feel like my vision was encapsulated in my presentation. I think there's a lot there that we can all take advantage of, and we should be taking advantage of it.
Up on the top.
Hi, good afternoon, Lois Bryce. I really enjoyed your first example, looking at your partnership with UNICEF addressing the Zika epidemic in Brazil. A few things about that interested me. One was that a third party could request the data, and then the involvement of Facebook to be able to help them to reach a specific community to influence behavior. So I have two questions related to that. The first is, who can request that information in terms of types of organizations or individuals and the mechanics behind that partnership. And then the second would be more localized. Right now we're dealing with a lot of crime and the issue of at-risk youth, and how can we reach those youth who, I'm assuming at this point that a lot of them have those smartphones that you mentioned and they're on Facebook. How can we reach them and influence their behavior? If you have any examples from other countries possibly that we can harness for our local issues.
Thank you, Lois.
Thank you.
So the first one on UNICEF is that we have a number of, our policy teams have a number of partnerships, and UNICEF is one of the partners. So through that partnership, this is how they request, they have a mechanism for requesting that. And it's something that we, once we saw how well that worked, and when I said to you, we are learning all the time from the world, it's really true. It's not like if we got up one day and knew everything we had to build for the world. As the world uses the products, we learn, oh, this is how people, this is another use case, this is another use case. And so we were learning through that Zika crisis as well, how UNICEF could use it. So now our policy team has developed a number of relationships, and they handle those. On the issue of how you help locally, this is literally about using the platform to create a cause. So when I said we have, Facebook for causes, if you go on there, that's on Facebook, you will see examples of how a number of other people with causes have used the platform to reach the people they wanted to reach. But we've also been intentional about making our targeting tools very, very simple to use. So every month I support a home for foster children. And I support that home by taking ads or boosting posts on Facebook to the people who I think will be interested in helping these foster children. And let me tell you, if I could work it out, anybody could work it out. It is very simple, right? So if you are a member of a community or a group, a cause, and you have a Facebook page, if you're an administrator, you see every time you post something, it'll say boost this post, right? People shaking their heads, you know what I'm talking about. And when you go and you click on that, it says, what do you want to spend? And you will be amazed for $10 how many people you reach. And you literally play around with it. You say, I want to reach people in this area, who are in this age range, who are of this gender, who have these interests. If you have a club for youth and you want them to start playing football more because that will get them off the streets, you can go on there and target people who are interested in football and youth in Chaguanas. So the whole thing is designed for you to get the most benefit for the people you care about.
An amazing lecture. My name is Nisa Pei. I do have a question and kind of piggybacks off of something, not sure who it was up there, but you mentioned Facebook, of course, as a tool of empowerment as well as empowering people with the ability to discern fake news from real news, etc. I do have a question, though, about one of Facebook's features, which is the Facebook Live option. I know, like I said, it's a tool of empowerment. It has exposed many evils as well as goods. However, there have been quite a few, unfortunately, very recent examples in terms of the, the publishing of suicide and a couple of, unfortunately, sexual assault cases. So what I'm curious to know is, even though Facebook Live has been an amazing tool, how does Facebook balance that in terms of, I mean, I know you don't want to censor anybody, but at the same time, there is this element of responsibility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's a very tricky thing. Like everything else, as I said, when you invent the telephone, people will use it for good, for bad. When airmail, right? They'll use it for good and for bad. And so we know that, and we try to develop standards for all of our tools, what we call community standards, where, for instance, we say we don't allow hate speech, we don't allow violence, right? There are some things that are just no-go. But because the world is so diverse and complex, it is very hard to have a single rule apply very well everywhere. And as it goes along, so the Facebook Live, if everybody doesn't know, it's a feature where you can just use your phone and you're broadcasting live to the world, whatever's happening right now. I mean, by virtue of that fact, since it is literally live, it is very hard to stop something before it gets broadcast, right? So what we can do is we try to build, using AI and other means, build a series of checks so that when some things happen, a flag goes out, somebody gets alerted, we can either take it down immediately or go and see whether to take it down. So, you know, there was a famous case of a man called Philando Castile who was killed by a police officer, and his girlfriend got the aftermath of it on Facebook. And people were so happy to be able to see that live. But that is violence. So that people say you shouldn't be showing violence, right? It's a very hard needle to thread. So, as I said, we have these standards where if something is of benefit to a community, something that stays up, you mentioned suicide. Everything on the basis of research. There is, so a lot of people who work in supporting communities, supporting people who have suffered through suicide, have said that often when people go online or when people tell their friends, it's a call for help, and that letting people hear that call will often get them help, right? So again, like at what point does it overstay its welcome? It's not that we are choosing to leave it up, it's that like to check everyone is very difficult. But once we get word of things like that, you know, child abuse is another one. We recently got in a lot of trouble to show you the complexity of this because we have a kind of no tolerance standard on child nudity. You cannot post no pictures of a naked child. And if the system or a person who is checking, right, so we have people doing it and we have artificial intelligence doing it. If it recognizes that some picture, now remember, if there are 2 billion people using it all the time, there are bazillions of photos going up constantly, right? You don't have enough people to be checking all of that. So we build systems in place. So one of our systems that we use AI for is that if the machine recognizes that this is a child, picture of a naked child, it will take it down immediately. And then it goes into kind of gate checking and people can appeal that, etc. So, saw a picture of a naked child, took it down immediately. Well, it turned out that was the Terror of War photo, which is a famous photo that brought attention to the horrid things that were going on in the war, where they were using chemical weapons, etc., and a child was running through the streets in pain. And that photo really, like, you know, like the photo of Alan on the beach, the Syrian refugee, it did a lot for the world to turn attention to these horrific things. And so, you know, people said, you're crazy, how could you take that down? This thing has importance, historical value, newsworthiness, but at the same time, it's still a picture of a naked child. And so it is a very difficult thing. So how we balance it is, we're constantly trying to do the right thing, the intention is good, serving the whole world is hard, right? There are some countries where not even child, adult nudity is just fine. That's part of freedom of expression. There are others where, no, everybody should be fully cloaked, right? It's hard. And if you're serving the whole world in this global community, we try our best to have standards. We're going to try, we're constantly working on things. And so one of the things we are working on now is how do we give different communities different levels of exposure, you know, what would they want, what would they not want. So always tinkering with it. We're not perfect by any means, but we're trying to do the right thing.
And it's through that cognitive diversity that you can
That's
solve
how you
those
get
problems,
better,
right?
yeah. If you have people with different perspectives, we'll be able to see all of the angles better.
We're coming very close to the end of the Q&A. Nikolai?
Hi, good evening. Nikolai Edwards. Now, my question is, in your role as Global Director Diversity, you would be trying to attract talents from a diverse background and what have you. But how do you prevent that diversity from developing into groupthink? Because a lot of the times when persons from different backgrounds come together and there is one popular opinion that arises, everyone kind of just goes that direction. So how do you maintain that? And on the other side, we know with algorithms on Facebook, a lot of the times the things that you like, the things that you search, those things tend to pop up on your news feed or on the internet. How does Facebook, without kind of censoring or kind of interfering, ensure that persons are still exposed to a wide range of information and things that they should be thinking about?
Well, on the first part, diversity is literally the antidote to groupthink. Groupthink happens when you get the same people together. So all the research shows that even if you just had one person in a group who looked different from the others, you would get better results. Everybody would be more thorough. They see it in juries, for instance. If you have an all-white jury and one black person on that jury will come up with a better result. Because in the presence of somebody who looks like an other, people do better research, they deliberate longer, they look at more of the evidence, because there is some latent distrust. So it's a situation where distrust works to your benefit and goes against groupthink. So part of us doing all these efforts to get more diversity is to go against that. On the other part of your question, I'm trying to understand exactly what is the piece of it that you break it down for me to the part that is most important to you.
Use a mic.
Yeah, you're saying that like the cookies, right? So the cookies are operating, and what you search will come up.
So
but what is the question about
in terms of if I join Facebook, there will be obviously a group of persons that I would prefer to associate with. It goes just like a support group. You would go to that support group knowing that you want to band together with persons who have similar thinking. But at the same time, that can be dangerous because you're being fed the same kind of poison that you may be suffering from.
Oh, okay.
So to ensure,
Okay. So, I mean, again, primarily, this is a question of what choices you make on the platform, right? So you get to choose your friends, and you get to choose who you want to follow. And because there's such a wide range of people on the platform, you can also choose, if you have an interest in seeing different opinions, you can go to different pages, right? During the US election, I would deliberately go and look at the pages of people who I knew did not have my viewpoint, because I wanted to understand how were they thinking, what were they sharing, what was their belief system, what was motivating them. That's all available to you. So the research we have done has shown that you get more diversity of opinion on Facebook than you get in your regular life, just because in your regular life, people also tend to associate people who are just like them. So the advantage of this is that everybody and globally is there. So if you choose, you can look for people who have these different opinions. When we ask people what they want most on this platform, they say, I want to connect with my family and friends, right? The fact about human nature is that your family and friends tend to be people like you. So it's hard to have that and then also have, as you say, we don't want to be the people getting in the way, forcing you, saying, you should do this, you should do that, because then we become these sort of superpower people. We want to give you the option to do what works for you. So if you have an interest in looking and learning and listening to other opinions, it is there for you. And I would just encourage you to take advantage of that.
Thank you. Do we have one more, Renata? Okay.
Hi, Maxine. My name is Felicia Chang. Thank you very much. I have a question for you about diversity in terms of your design and user experience. So how much of that actually happens? So for example, have you created what we would call almost like the most culturally neutral page? Or is it very tailored depending on the country? So Arabic countries that writes in a different direction, or is blue in a different country meaning something else to someone else? So I have a question about how diversity trickles down to the out like that. And also, of course, working on diverse teams, the amazing part about it is all the different perspectives that you get in the dynamism. But because you have so much experience and you have to team build, is there an easy in that you have? You know, like universal things that connect us all, like food. Or, you know, as soon as you talk about family, people click, you know, so.
Among our teams when we're working on things.
Yeah, and I think that that also speaks to more of a global platform too. Because if you have such a diverse team, you get all of these different global perspectives. Yeah. So it kind of gives us an insight too. Is it food? Or even maybe actually you do have big data information.
Okay,
about
let's give sorry to cut you off, but let's give her a chance to answer. Thank you.
So the first part of the question is about design. And yes, we have, a number of designers in different places, and they absolutely want to be creating things that most people want to use. So we have to balance between having a universal something and then having things which, as you say, are tailored. We call Facebook the Blue app. Because now we are a family of apps, right? There's Instagram and WhatsApp and Messenger, etc. We have Oculus and everything else, Live. And so Facebook itself, what you know as the original Facebook, if you notice, it is very neutral, you would say. At the time Facebook came along, there was something called MySpace. Do people remember that?
It was obviously a comedy platform. Everybody's laughing.
And if you compare what MySpace looks like to what Facebook looks like, very, very different, right? There was a lot going on everybody's MySpace. It was busy. And that was what people knew for that kind of thing. And then, a new company came and said, no, we're going to do this a little different. Because always our intention was to be a neutral platform, to be a platform that everyone could use, because our mission is to connect the entire world. So we felt like if we said less, you would have the space to say more. And that's connected to the last question, which is the last part of your question, which is that if there's one thing that connects all of us, it is that we are very passionate about our mission to connect the entire world.
Thank you. And Maxine, if you indulge us for one final question.
Yes?
We have, as you know, an online audience that's been looking at this via live stream. And I understand our marketing team has organized one question, which will be the last question of the Q&A session. So somebody in the back is going to read that question.
Good evening, everyone, and we will end on a light note, Maxine. One of our online viewers would like to know if you can appeal to Facebook to develop a Stoops emoji. This comment comes from Franca Phillip, one of our local journalists. And so, as you know, of course, the Stoops is one of the key elements of how we communicate overall.
So this is in Facebook Messenger you're talking about?
No, an emoji.
That would be in the reactions, yeah.
All right.
Wake everybody up.
I don't know what a Stoops face looks like, though. No, I know what it sounds like. I'm saying, what does his face look like? But then that could be a Maggie, too.
Yeah, you can put a Maggie. Everybody understand a Maggie.
All right. So, pursed lips. All right, I'll try.
Fantastic question. So, ladies and gentlemen, please give Maxine a wonderful round of applause.
Thank you.
Leaving, I would like, after McKinney talks, I would like everyone to please remain seated and allow some of our guests, Ms. Williams and some of our guests to leave before you leave, and then the ushers will take you out, okay? So, Ms. McKinney Barrow.
Okay.
Good evening, special invited guests, students of the University of West Indies, the media, all protocols observed. We at the University of the West Indies are always eager to push the barriers of knowledge, and in being here, we would have been able to gather much needed knowledge and perspective on social media and the creation of global communities. A special thank you is extended to Ms. Maxine Williams, the Global Director of Diversity at Facebook, who found time in her hectic schedule to be here today to share with us her wealth of knowledge. I remember from watching multiple shows you hosted as a child, admiring your charisma and your style. which you have seemed to manage still. You certainly inspired me throughout the years. I was captivated with the internet.org and how individuals can use it as a tool to connect to improve their situation, develop their talents from the comfort of their homes. You highlighted the efforts of Facebook to partner with international organizations like UNICEF to help individuals understand and also voice their concerns about global epidemics affecting all of us and the rights we have as individuals to use this freedom of information. As a student who studies politics and is very passionate about it, Facebook have afforded me and many students the opportunity to keep up with global issues that affects us and are very pertinent to our degree. The use of Facebook to enhance our education, especially through Facebook groups, which I myself use to share tabs, journals, on research to my group members on courses we are pursuing, has certainly impacted the educational world, which you made mention of. I am sure we as students of the University of West Indies can now see the benefits and its applicability to our day-to-day life, and we are very appreciative for this learning experience that you have provided us with. I hope that this will not be the last of an event of this nature. It would be remiss of me not to acknowledge the contribution of the Office of the Campus Principal, the Deputy Principal, Professor Rhoda Reddock, the members and staff of Marketing and Communication Unit, the bursary, the staff of the campus security, the staff of the Teaching and Learning Complex, and of course, the hardworking members of the Open Lectures Committee, Ms. Patricia Sampson, Professor Christine Carrington, the moderator, and of course, Mr. Sharon Singh, Director of Institutional Advancement and Internationalization, all of whom worked tirelessly to ensure this event was a success and afforded me this opportunity to give the closing remarks and vote of thanks for this event. And lastly, a special thank you is given to all of you, members of the audience, who, like myself, will be leaving with a greater appreciation and knowledge on social media and the creation of global communities. I thank you. Sorry. Okay, I would like to call Miss Maxine Williams up. Oh my God. That's okay. And call Miss Professor Carrington. Thanks.
On behalf of the University of West Indies and the Open Lectures Committee, we'd like to thank you so much for coming to speak to us today. It was really a pleasure. Thank you so much. It's just a little extra, some recent publication from the University Advisor for